Have you ever seen a new housing development pop up and wondered what's really going on behind the scenes? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden risks and asking a really important question that honestly every single community should be asking.
So let's just cut right to the chase. When high-density development gets pushed through, who's actually on the hook if things go wrong? It's a question that's so easy to overlook in the rush to build, but you know what? The answer can have some pretty serious consequences for our environment, our infrastructure, and yeah, our wallets.
Because here's the thing. Way too often, the developer isn't the one footing the bill for the long-term problems. Nope. It's the towns, it's the taxpayers, it's the families living just downstream who are left cleaning up the mess from failing systems and environmental damage years after the ribbon cutting.
Okay, so to really get what's at stake here, we have to look past all the shiny architectural drawings and the glossy brochures. We've got to uncover the hidden price tag that's usually buried deep in the fine print of these development proposals.
Now look at this slide, because the contrast here is everything. The simple idea we're always sold is more housing units. It sounds so straightforward, right? But the complex reality is that a development is never, ever just units. It's a whole intricate network of systems that all have to work together perfectly.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Every single new development creates this huge ripple effect. It changes how water flows, it affects wetlands, it tests the limits of our sewer system, not to mention it puts more strain on our roads, our schools, and our first responders. And then there's the big one. Someone, somewhere, has to pay to maintain all that new infrastructure for decades to come.
So here's the bottom line. When those systems are under-designed, or when they inevitably start to fail over time, the damage isn't some abstract concept. It's not theoretical. Your basement floods, the local river gets polluted, and it's the public, it's us, who end up paying to fix it all.
So you can see how this plays out in the real world. Let's zoom in on a case study. And this one has a particularly tricky twist. It's a project that straddles the border between two different towns.
We're looking at the Plumtree Lane proposal, a project planned right on the Trumbull-Easton border. This is what you call a cross-municipal project, and it is the perfect example of how unbelievably complicated things get when the decisions made in one town can directly impact its next-door neighbor.
And this just illustrates the problem perfectly. When a project spans two towns, the public record gets fractured. It's like trying to put together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Town A has a little bit of stormwater data. Town B has a local sewer analysis. But guess what? Neither town has the full picture. And that fragmented view, well, that increases the risk for everybody.
You know, the Plumtree Lane case really drives home the need for a much tougher, more rigorous way of looking at these projects. And that's exactly why we've put together a list of 14 critical questions that every single community should be asking before a single shovel ever hits the ground.
Let's kick things off with financial and legal liability. First off, if pollution shows up years from now, who pays for the cleanup? If the developer sells the property, what legally guarantees that the new owner will maintain everything? And this is a big one. What happens if the developer's company, their LLC, just dissolves or reforms? How do we make sure accountability doesn't just vanish into thin air?
Okay, next up, evidence and expertise. In a project like this, will expert testimony and critical data be shared openly between the towns? Or will it be siloed, creating a dangerously incomplete picture? If one expert says one thing and another says the complete opposite, how do decision-makers sort that out? And maybe most importantly, when residents, the people who actually live there, come forward with first-hand accounts of flooding, will that be treated as real evidence?
Now let's talk about the direct costs and how we protect ourselves. Who is actually on the hook to pay for expanding things like sewer lines and emergency services? Has an independent expert confirmed that the downstream sewer system can even handle the extra load? And what specific, rock-solid safeguards are in place to protect our public water supply, like a reservoir, from all that construction runoff and potential system failures?
And finally, let's talk about guarantees and enforcement. Is the town going to demand a real financial safety net, a substantial surety bond to protect taxpayers if something catastrophic happens? And are all the promises and conditions that the developer agrees to actually enforceable? Or are they just pretty words on a piece of paper with no real teeth?
So asking all these tough questions, it isn't about trying to stop projects, not at all. It's about changing the entire conversation. It's about setting a new, much more responsible standard for getting an approval.
And let's be crystal clear on this point. These are not anti-housing questions. They are public safety questions. They are public trust questions. We can, and we absolutely should, build new housing without trashing our watersheds,
bankrupting our towns, or ignoring basic due process. So what we need is a simple, clear standard for approval. And here it is. No project gets a green light if the liability is fuzzy, if the long-term costs are being hidden from the public, or if enforcement is basically just wishful thinking. Period.
Look, if a town is going to be responsible for the long-term risks, then it has not only a right, but a duty to demand these 4 things. 1. Transparent studies that anyone can see. 2. Enforceable maintenance agreements that stick no matter who owns the property. 3. Meaningful bonding that covers the real cost of a potential failure. And 4. Lasting accountability.
And that brings us to our final question. And this one's for you to think about. The next time a big project is proposed in your community, who in your town is asking these questions? Who is putting them on the public record? Because once the approvals are stamped and the concrete is poured, it is incredibly hard to put a watershed and the public's trust back together again.